Welcome to another episode of CVN's Trial Technique Spotlight. My name is Shane Reed. I'm a trial consultant and I'm an award-winning author of trial textbooks, and I'm also an adjunct professor at SMU. And what I want to explore today is one of the best lawyers going, which is Arash Homampour, and he does something really brilliant. So I want you to imagine if you have a case where you're suing on behalf of a paralyzed bicyclist who's on the roadway in a San Diego park, and he gets hit by a person who's on meth driving a car going twice the speed limit. And you're trying to sue the city, claiming that they had overgrown vegetation and had created a blind spot in this curve, so that's why your client got hit by the car and is now paralyzed. I mean, it's really impossible because you've got this really bad fact that the person who hit him was on meth going twice the speed limit. So what do you do? Most lawyers would get lost in the details, but I want to show you what Arash Homampour did here, because what he does so well, and it's the reason he wins this case and gets a $24 million settlement from the city of San Diego after he gets the verdict, is the following. He makes complicated ideas simple. Einstein once said, if you can't explain it simply, you don't understand it well enough. Well, Arash does both of those. He understands it well enough, and then he can explain it simply. So let's watch just 2 minutes of his closing argument, and we're going to watch how he explains something very simply, and then we'll talk about it a little further. Here it is.
This blind corner is going to produce an accident at some point in time, and unfortunately it produced the worst type of accident. A bicyclist given absolute permission to use this roadway, doing it like everybody else does, is now confronted with a hazard he can't see because they didn't trim the vegetation with rules designed to prevent this very incident. The reason you're supposed to trim vegetation, the reason you're supposed to not have blind corners, is so exactly what happened to Mr. Vinolo doesn't happen. And he's been paralyzed, so he's been harmed. And it's the worst kind of harm. This is not you're stubbing your toe, this is not some minor injury. This is a major...
I'll allow that, then let's go, counsel.
This is a major devastating injury caused by the city's failure to do something very simple. And that is make sure that people can see around the corners of their man-made road. It's that simple. And from the day of the incident, even on news reports, it was very clear. Everyone said, blind corner. By the way, we started this case telling you that Miss Owens is responsible, okay? There's no dispute. We are the ones that agreed she's responsible. We agree she's responsible for his harm. This entire case has been about looking at what role did the city play, because we believe the evidence is very clear. It doesn't matter who's coming around the wrong way. That was going to happen at some point in time because they didn't clearly mark the area, and we'll talk about that. But the evidence is very clear. Whoever Miss Owens was, whatever the it could have been a tourist from Italy, it could have been someone from Northern California confused about where they're going. This accident was going to happen because that vegetation wasn't trimmed. And so this case is very simply focusing on the city of San Diego's legal responsibility to manage its property that it allowed people to use in a safe way to prevent what happened to Mr. Vinolo.
Arash Homampour did so many things well, but let's just look at 3 of them. The first thing he does is he talks about that the city had rules that they had to follow, rules to keep the roads safe and not let vegetation get overgrown so it could create a blind corner. So he's not just simplifying things for the jury. He knows the details, knows the rules, and explains to the jury that the city didn't follow its own rules. Secondly, he talks about the injury, and he says it's not just stubbing a toe, using an analogy, but he says it's the worst kind of injury. And what I love is he gets an objection, which just highlights that the other attorney doesn't like what Arash Homampour is saying because they know it's hurtful and it's damaging their case. And then the third thing he does, which is the best thing, is he says, you know what? This was an accident waiting to happen, using as an analogy that it doesn't matter if the person was on meth. Anyone at some point coming around this blind corner was going to hit a bicyclist. And his client happened to be that person that the city knew eventually would happen because they had the blind corner. So, just to summarize it all, what Arash Homampour does so well and what makes him such a great lawyer is he makes complicated ideas simple, and he wins a case where others wouldn't have. So, if you want to see more tips, go to CVN's vast library of trial techniques, where you can check out my tips on LinkedIn or at my website. Hey, I look forward to seeing you next time on CVN's Trial Techniques Spotlight.